show.
Twitter is live.
Yay.
Let's see the LinkedIn.
Okay. We're live on Twitter. We're live, well, X Twitter, as we like to call it. We're live on maybe Facebook.
I'll let you know. I really did have to run back from. I was in Richmond.
Is LinkedIn live? Because I don't see it.
I don't see it on LinkedIn yet.
Yeah, I got Facebook.
Facebook is
Yeah.
live. I'm confirming, and Frank's confirming.
Okay, so it looks like LinkedIn's not going to work.
Oh, I can check as well.
Oh, well, too late to readjust.
Yeah.
Okay, and YouTube. All right, so we're streaming to 3 platforms, and we're about to start the Gillmor gang. Okay, places everybody. Quiet on the set. On the virtual set. Okay, mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. Welcome to, from the state of UK, Frank Radis.
Steve, gangsters, aloha.
Aloha from London.
It's a universal thing.
There you go.
It's Yiddish, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. We were just talking about Passover.
Yeah, I passed over it.
Okay, from the state of formerly confusion and now at the heart of the campaign is, and by which state I mean Georgia, is Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
Well, thank you. And if we had somebody that lived in like one of the Dakotas, would that be they would be coming from the state of DK maybe instead of
Oh,
DK, I get it.
You see what I did there?
I see what you did there. I saw that.
From the state of the framework of Massachusetts is, what is your name? Oh, yeah, Dennis Pombriant.
That's right. Reporting from the Big Salami, the organizing committee for the big tsunami coming in November.
wow. That sounded like a fire sign.
You know, it could be a salami tsunami.
It could be a tsunami salami.
It's hard, not easy to
for you to say.
Okay,
The big salami.
from Palo Alto.
It's lit up today.
From
That's
Palo Alto, California, is Keith Tier. Welcome.
I was just remembering that back in the 1974-75 era, when I was at college, calling the UK a state of the US was a popular leftist accusation.
Exactly.
Whoa.
That's what I was trying to say. And rounding out the gang is our producer, director, and everything else, Tina Chase Gillmor. Welcome, Tina.
I wonder what everything else is about.
Oh, we'll find out later.
We're gonna find out later. Everybody.
We want a full report.
Yeah,
Is that enough of a lower third for you?
yeah, it was fine. We don't need to see my face.
we
They
need a
don't need
gang.
no stinking badges.
We need a gangster that lives in Oklahoma because we can then say from the state of OK
See?
or the
Wow,
OK state.
Brent's got these all day.
But
I'm here
Okay,
for.
so I'm going to retain a tight control of the show for various reasons.
So you think?
Yeah, no, I know so. I've got the button here. And mostly it's because Brent has a hard stop, an early hard stop that we have to navigate around. And
So we're gonna get a lot of Brenton.
Brenton.
No one ever said that before. Anyway, moving on.
Brenton.
I don't
so
know why. I don't know why I did that. Anyway.
There was some pretty important stuff that happened this week, from at least from my perspective, related to NBC News.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And
Ooh.
I'd like to start with a former employee of NBC News. The guy, I don't know where he is on your screen, but he's in my lower right, and that's Frank Radis. So
Mine too.
how do you feel about this? And then I'll tell you how I feel about it.
I feel like
Oh, Frank,
from
you
the
just do the quickest synopsis, like a one sentence of what happened before you roll into what you think.
so Rona Romney, ooh, that's not her name anymore, who was the head of the RNC, who was recently replaced by a Trump, Laura, I guess that's her name. She's the number two, was hired by three people in management at NBC, the number one, then the number two, actually four people, the number three and the number four, if you look at the org chart. So the CEO of NBC News, the president of NBC News, the executive vice president of politics, and the senior vice president of cable, I think. I'm not sure what the SVP is. It's below my pay grade. And almost immediately, there was a huge uproar, starting with Chuck Todd on the air, which you never hear. It doesn't happen. Well, it did happen this time. And then it went to just 4 or 5 of the other top names at MSNBC. The NBC guys, you didn't hear from Lester Holt. You didn't hear from the NBC folks. You heard from the MSNBC folks. So the first thing that happened was the MSNBC executives said, if you do a show on the MSNBC network, you do not have to book Roma or Roni or whatever her name is.
I like that, Roni.
Roni.
Rona, help me,
You
Rona.
know, Roni. You don't have to book her on your show. And that was directly because of the animosity that was expressed on the air by the MSNBC anchors. Again, nobody at NBC Network said anything. She was hired by the chairman of the network, which means MSNBC, CNBC, all the stations, and NBC Network. Anything that has NBC News attached to it. She was hired at $300,000 a year, reportedly, for 2 years. This thing got so bad and so noisy, which again, never happened before. I can't remember it ever happening anywhere. Remember, in 1977, Henry Kissinger was hired by NBC or ABC to be a spokesperson. It didn't cause as much uproar. It didn't cause any uproar. Everybody just booked him. Anyway, it caused such a huge uproar that 48 hours, I want to say, after she was hired, she was fired. So that means that the reporters and anchors who did make a lot of noise sort of made their bed and decided that they would sleep in it. And the management said, "Okay, we'll let you sleep in it." But it didn't stop there. It continued to fester, as would be said in was it Uncle Fester? I was trying to think of an Uncle Fester joke. I didn't have one. But
There's always Festus from Gunsmoke.
It Uncle Festered and it Festus, and it was a Festivus. And what happened
For
was,
the rest of us.
thank you, for the rest of us. And what happened was it put the chairman of NBC on notice. This is a guy named Cesar Conde who came from Univision, or Univision, to be exact. I actually worked with him at Univision. Thought he was a very smart guy, but when he was, my opinion, when he was hired to be the chairman of the news division, I kind of went, huh? It didn't make sense because his interaction with the news division at Univision, that rhymed, was minimal because they had a really strong president of the Univision news division. So I worked with the whole company. So I worked with the news division, the entertainment division. I had an insight into how that worked. And I always thought, okay, well, that's smart because I didn't see Caesar as the brilliant news mind that, even if you didn't like Andy Lack, for example, he was a brilliant journalist. And every president prior to Andy Lack at NBC would be looked at as a really smart person, whether it was Steve Kappas or who is now the head of NPR, or the last president after Steve Kappas is now one of the presidents at Public Broadcasting. I mean, some really smart people. I don't want to say that Caesar isn't smart, but I will say that the way that was handled wasn't smart. And then he came out with a really weird letter to the staff that started out with something like, "Hey, gang," which is like, what? And at the end, it was like, "Have a nice day." It was just so weird. And he never, in the email, as I recall, he never took credit for the mistake, but he did say publicly that, everyone was involved. The other 3 were involved, but I'm the chairman, so the buck stops here. I think that was a little bit not enough and too late. So my opinion is they did the right thing by by letting her go, but did the wrong thing by hiring her in the first place. And that's my opinion and the story in a nutshell.
Okay.
Okay, but what did you think of it?
Yeah, that's
What did I think? What did I think of it? I thought it was a really stupid idea to begin with, bringing in somebody that was an
Well, I
election.
mean, we've seen if you've got the YouTube TV grid capability, then you get to see what I've been seeing for the last few days, which is basically in the upper left, you've got Fox, which is, relentlessly Fox. In the lower right, you've got BBC, which, dabbles in these kinds of issues, but was much more focused on the situation in Gaza, etc.
And by the way, the BBC went absolutely all out on the bridge collapse, by the way.
Right. Well, yeah, they got to do something, right? It's live.
Yeah.
And then how's that going for PPN in terms of your coverage? What have you been going, Brent?
What?
Well, you've got an interesting show coming up in about an hour with the debut of the long expected and whatever it's called, No BS with Bob Stutz, who's he's a no BS kind of guy, and with his guest Esteban Kolsky, whose show I was on last week. So you've got some of these CRM related and business enterprise related folks that you're focusing on PPN. Would that be a fact?
Let me think about that for a minute.
Okay. And then
Yeah, I guess.
what?
Yeah, I guess so. That's a good way to sum it up.
Meh.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
okay.
so
So
then go
can I
ahead.
ask a question? So as an outsider to this media circus, my observation was MSNBC and NBC News must be 2 different fiefdoms. The NBC News is more like an old-fashioned news organization, and the reason they could hire this woman is because they don't think in a kind of political frame; they just think in a news frame. And from that point of view, it wasn't necessarily a bad decision.
Let me clarify that a little bit for you, Keith.
Yeah.
They are not. They are one organization. This mess split them.
Oh,
That's what happened.
Yeah, and it
because-
was not a news decision. It was a entirely political decision. They were, as Chuck Todd said in his comments, they're basically trying to get some
balance,
conservative balance,
representation.
and they did so by hiring a co-conspirator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was an insurrection.
But isn't
Right.
another word for conservative balance just balance?
Absolutely. You're 100% right. And the funny thing is about that is that it showed for the very first time blatantly that NBC and MSNBC were doing, or that MSNBC would have been forced to do exactly what it wasn't doing, which was showing both sides. They don't. They are very liberal. They occasionally will have a right wing sort of an analyst, but there are no right wing anchors. There are, by the way, at CNBC, and CNBC, although it's also part of that family, wasn't a part of the argument.
Yeah. By the way, Frank, this morning, and Steve, I watched Morning Joe, which I haven't done for a while. I think it's had an impact because Morning Joe this morning teed up the three presidents in Radio City last night, raising 26 million for Biden's campaign, alongside Trump visiting the family of killed police officers in New York.
Oh, that was so political.
But wait, they actually acknowledged that the split screen of those two was in Trump's favor and discussed it rationally. It was way less Morning Joe-ish than it's been recently. So it feels to me as if internally, whatever the outcome has been, that balance goal may well be a real thing.
Well, I can understand why you say that at first blush, but let me tell you that in the light of day, the next day, that won't be the way it is. I guarantee it. That Morning Joe,
it'll lapse back to
yes, it will. And
well,
remember,
the big problem is that good luck on trying to get some conservative balance on NBC News in the aftermath of this ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, as I was trying to say a little bit earlier, CBS in the upper right-hand corner of the quad screens. Is it CBS? No, it's CNN, right? Actually, they do have a contractual relationship, but CNN has gone hard Fox about half of their programming for the past 4 months, and so you get to see with the Fox in the upper left, you see hard right, MSNBC in the lower left, you see hard left. And CNN is, pretty much down the middle. So this, I think, was NBC's attempt to split the baby, pardon the expression, and try and have a editorial strategy that mirrored what CNN is doing.
I would argue with that a little bit and say that what NBC was doing was hedging its bet in case Trump wins.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's more that than anything else. I honestly don't think that all of a sudden, let me explain this, that all of a sudden the management of NBC and MSNBC decided that they weren't giving enough balance. I don't think that just all of a sudden happened. I think that what all of a sudden happened was they're looking at the numbers and going, this could be going the other way. We better make sure we have somebody here that will please.
Okay, so I would like to hang on a sec. I'd like to. I'm going to be a little bit aggressive about this. Dennis, that sort of goes to your stated feeling that the election is going to go not Trump's way. Where I agree with Frank that seems to be. I think NBC is betraying some fear about the consequences of not having a successful middle of the road or even right-wing story.
Well, I think there's a big hole in this whole conversation in that Rona was on board for such a short time that we don't know what kind of footprint she would have put down. It's worth keeping in mind that Joe Scarborough and Nicole Wallace and probably some others on MSNBC were GOP operatives. She worked for George W.
Yeah.
Before that, Jeb Bush. He was a congressman from Florida. Yeah. So one possibility, excuse me, one possibility is that Rona could have come on as a as a straight talking analyst, but giving the conservative side, which might have been useful. I don't know. That didn't happen. But as far as the balance thing is concerned, I think it's worth keeping in mind that the old witticism that reality has a liberal bias. I think the right is so far off to the right that you can't really balance them by having a 50-50 split. 50-50 is purely numerical. The right is so far in the ditch right now that it doesn't make sense to give them much more than a token ability to respond. Which, if you look at if you look at Fox News, they have token Democrats or token liberals.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, they have those token liberals have actually made a lot of noise on Fox recently. You also need to know that NBC and MSNBC had to have been being pushed by her agents because it's reported that CNN and ABC were also talking to her. So that created a situation where three competitors were going after the same person. In the real world, or in the world that I lived in the pretty distant past, they would have used her as an expert witness, so to speak, for a while to make sure that everyone felt comfortable with her. But they didn't do that because they didn't have the time to do that because of the competition, I think.
Well, so
I think you make an excellent point.
Hang on a second. I want to get Tina's been trying to get into
I
this.
don't know. At this point, I have just so many things to say about it. I understand a news organization wanting some balance. However, the Republican Party, to me, it seems like there's the Republican Party, and then part of that Republican Party is the Trump Party. And they're different. Not everybody in the Republican Party is in agreement with Trump, likes Trump, or wants Trump. Not all the people in the Republican Party are election deniers. I think what was so surprising to me is not that they were trying to go for balance and get a responsible Republican, a well-educated, well-spoken Republican, such as Nicole Wallace or something, but they went after an election denier, a person who actively and still will not answer the question about that election. I mean, her answers are very squirrely and really don't, she does not complete the answer, really. So my surprise was there that they would choose her.
Oh, I would have chosen McCain and given her $500,000 a year and given her a 3-year contract.
You mean
Yeah, you could
Cindy
do that.
McCain? You mean?
Yes.
Oh, Cindy. Oh, okay.
They may get.
So Tina, I think there's a problem with your narrative, although I think it's accurate. And the problem is, you can't really decide balance based on cutting off somewhere between 25% and 50% of the world and say they don't count in the meaning of the word balance. The fact is, there are lots of election deniers, and they're real, and they believe it. And, they shouldn't be considered outside of the tent. If they are part of the tent called the American people. And so you actually want to, a bit like Michael Moore in the 2020 election, went on the road in the Midwest to talk to Trump supporters and came back and made a documentary about it, which was fantastic, by the way. You have to engage with the stuff you disagree with, no matter how strongly your disagreement, because otherwise any attempt to influence the middle by the middle seeing the debate, where you give them enough rope to alienate them from the middle, you have to have them in the room. And
I agree
you know,
with you, except wait a minute. I agree with you, Keith. On the one hand, you're absolutely right. On the other hand, you don't have to pay that person to be that to express that opinion. You can get those people just by picking up the telephone and getting them on the air.
Well, I think there you've got to separate the business decision, which I completely agree was a poor decision at every level, and by the way, caving in to the MSNBC people was also a bad decision. The whole thing is a bad decision because it just makes MSNBC and NBC look like there's no leadership at all.
Well,
Absolutely.
if that's true, then, you know,
I
at
don't
least we're
agree.
getting some.
I don't agree. I don't
No,
agree.
I think he's right. I think that it because of that, it put the leadership publicly in question of
The
NBC News.
leadership is in the journalists.
No.
That's right.
Oh,
Not
the business. I'm
No,
talking about.
the-
I'm talking about the business leadership.
Yes.
The journalists are just employees.
And by the
Well,
way,
that
here's
is so
Oh,
not
they
true.
have power.
That is so not true.
No,
The
by the
journalists
way,
are the product.
and they have the most.
Yeah, but they're not like in my company. I have employees, right? These people are paid salaries. They're not shareholders in the corporation.
Doesn't matter if they all walk away. You don't have a product anymore.
And by the way, it is because of their platform that
No,
they are allowed.
I disagree. You can always
No.
replace talent.
No,
Yes, you can.
I totally disagree with that.
Wait a minute. It is because of their platform and the amount of people that they will reach, even if they only say their negative comments once, that makes it so powerful. A and B, they're not going to replace. I will tell you, they did without hesitation replace people like Matt Lauer. He was gone in a second,
Yeah.
but that was for a totally different reason.
Well, let's agree the business decisions were bad, just bad.
Well, I
bad.
don't agree with that. I don't
But
think that what MSNBC anchors contributed to this led to a bad decision by the business people. I think it was, as it was said over and over again, starting with Chuck Todd and then amplified by Rachel Maddow, was this was a dumb thing that you did, and you should reverse it.
Yeah, and my reaction to that was, I can't say the words live on air, but whiny little bees. I honestly think they should just do their job.
I get that, and that I don't ascribe or agree with. When you say that, I don't agree with you.
Oh, I know.
Okay, so I'd like to say at this point that what I was going to say earlier in the show, which is Chuck Todd is the reason that this happened, because Chuck Todd, for whatever reasons, decided that just because he's paid by NBC News doesn't mean that he's not going to say what he thinks. And together with his successor on Meet the Press,
Kristen Welker.
Kristen Welker, thank you, who did what she does incredibly well, which is to, just basically keep asking the same questions that are being evaded by the election deniers. She basically put it out in front what then Chuck Todd came back to, as he called the elephant in the room, and basically said, this is unacceptable. And, this person used to be paid by the RNC, and she was on the phone calls with the former president about trying to get certain things accomplished that are being at the heart of co-conspirators in some of the legal actions that are taking place.
So
and he said,
let me
we
add
can't
something.
keep this going.
So there was one thing that doesn't exist now that used to exist at all of the networks. Leaving, Brent?
Gotta go.
Oh,
See you
Hey,
guys
buddy.
later.
Just as it's winding down.
Yeah. So there's one thing, and that is that Tom Brokaw, Howard K. Smith, Dan Rather, they were also the managing editors of their networks. So I believe that that Lester Holt is the managing editor of NBC News, but not of MSNBC, and that there isn't a managing editor at MSNBC, but
Well,
the
Chuck
one that
Todd's
hold on,
role
hold-
was as political director. I'm just
yeah, I would say that Chuck Todd, I was going to say Chuck Todd comes as close to being a managing editor at MSNBC as anybody.
Mhm.
And the managing editor at NBC, I would bet money that in terms of the decision to hire this woman, Lester Holt was at the table and said no. And that is one of the reasons why NBC did not force anyone to book her on NBC, although she was the guest of Kristen Welker on Meet the Press right after the hire. That probably was the only time that would have happened. And because Kristen didn't get anything out of her that you didn't expect, as far as I saw. But there is no real managing editor at MSNBC other than Chuck Todd. And that is the reason why Chuck had the power to be able to do that. He didn't do anything that was fireable. That's another thing. It's like you really can't fire your top talent because you don't like what they say.
But you
That's not
can't, but that's not necessarily, you apparently you can't be fired for that. But, this whole decision was made outside of the best practices of the network. And, uh, who knows? He took a chance.
Yeah.
He has taken a chance.
Well,
And
he was demoted. There's no doubt about that. He did get a demotion.
but that was because of his ratings and because
Yeah.
of his basically he was too much on the NBC side and not enough, had no real power base on the MSNBC side. And I don't think he still has much of a power base on the MSNBC side, but he basically said, okay, we're going to call this what it is.
Yeah.
And now you guys decide. And I thought it was a extremely important move.
Brave.
Not only brave, but effective.
Yeah.
He basically set up a situation where they had to be confronting this strategy that is employed not altogether by the right, but a lot by the right, which is to not answer questions that deviate from the narrative that they're projecting.
By the way, and he wasn't the only one, and she wasn't the only one, Rachel. Ari Melber and a number of the other talent were also against it and made a lot of noise about it.
Almost everyone.
Joy Reid's show, I'm not her biggest fan just because for various reasons, but she spent the first half of her show basically going through the history of what's going on here in an incredibly effective way, and then basically did what Rachel did before Rachel did it because of the timing of these segments.
Chris Hayes did it.
So to me, if Fox hired James Carville, who's super aggressive and clever, and the Fox journalist talent rebelled, and he ended up firing him.
It's not even
That's right.
It kind of is. It kind of is, unless you're saying that what she believes is outside of the tent. And I don't think it is. I think she's a quite mainstream thinker if you understand what's going on in the Republican Party.
You can't advocate overthrowing the government and be considered a valid journalist.
Yeah.
No, I don't agree with that. I mean, look, in Russia, we want journalists to want to overthrow the government.
No, we don't. We want them to get the story and bring it back.
We do.
Well, look, Navalny was not just about the story. He was about change.
That is precisely my point.
So, but it's not it's okay to even consider the government illegitimate is an okay point of view.
By the way, your
Not
example
to work to
would never
overthrow it,
happen.
Well, I'm saying we're becoming
not to look into the camera and,
by
and
not
deny the
seeing
reality of the
anything other
situation.
by only seeing who she is and what she represents, and therefore thinking it's okay for the talent to do what they did, is redefining the relationship between ideas and outcomes for me, where you limit the scope of what's possible to those you consider inside your tent. I think that's a mistake, a big mistake.
The talent was basically saying, we can't do our jobs this way. If you want us to tell the truth, we all have to be telling the truth.
Well, that's true. I agree with that, but that doesn't.
But
if
she
you're
wasn't doing that.
Well,
What she was doing was basically not answering the questions that would lead to somebody being able to say, well, on this day you said this, and now you're saying this. What
Yeah.
has changed? Okay, that's what Chuck Todd did. Chuck
every
Todd took
every,
the data that was generated by Kristen Welker and turned it around and said, you've been, what is the phrase?
Exposed?
No, yeah, but I mean,
but isn't that great? Doesn't that let you expose her?
Chuck
mean,
Todd was great.
But she now looks like a victim.
I'm not
You
worried
could have
about
made
what
her
she
look like
looks
an idiot.
I'm not, Keith, I think I understand your viewpoint. I just don't agree with it.
No, I know. Well, that's why we're discussing, and I'm not trying to persuade you, by the way. I'm just saying what I think.
You know, it would be useful to spend 30 seconds talking about how Ronna McDaniel was frankly abused by CAA and made an unforced error by accepting the job to begin with.
Yep.
If she had an agent or anybody that understood the dynamics of the world, somebody should have told her, you need to detoxify yourself. You need to go write a book and tell some truth. You need to.
Well, that's what she was trying to do.
Yeah.
She was trying to detoxify herself.
No, but
And NBC News said, okay.
And then she didn't
And
answer
Chuck
the
Todd
questions,
said,
so
nope,
then he-
sorry, don't buy it.
Well, no, but Dennis
An
makes a
addict
really,
doesn't
you
go
make
to
a good,
detox to be a counselor. An addict goes to detox to detox.
Do you think
actually,
by the way, do you think
you're
they
100% right. I know this
Can you
from,
explain it? Because I didn't understand it.
Do you think they paid her contract out, Frank? Did she get 600K for leaving?
She's in
two-
negotiations.
they're negotiating that right now, but I guarantee you she will get 600K and she may get more. But that's because if she can prove that her reputation was damaged. But Dennis, you're 100% right also. I think that CAA were the ones who were playing the three cards against each other and forced her into the one that paid the most and gave her the best deal. That's what happened with that, and that was CAA's fault. And I totally think that's right. And as for your detox thing, you're 100% right. You don't detox to become a leader. You detox to be able to continue to play the game.
I don't think there was
Thank you.
even a single good decision here all the way. If you look at every single decision, I mean, the one we'll disagree about is them firing her. I think that was a bad decision as well. But aside from that, we'll agree on every other one. Every single decision was bad. Her decisions were bad. NBC's decisions were bad. There's no one comes out of this smelling good.
Well,
I will tell
think that
you.
the MSNBC talent and Chuck Todd, who is not MSNBC talent, they came out smelling quite good.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a moment where we will look back if these approaches are taken in visibly, that a lot of the stuff that is going on in this campaign is going to be undermined by some rational thinking.
Yeah.
Steve, I will also add that I would also bet money that all of these anchors privately went to Cesar Conde and their bosses, and they got nothing. And then they went on the air to get something. I believe that they tried. This is how it works. I shouldn't say that. It's not quite how it works because it never worked this way before. But it worked this way because they didn't get what they wanted by doing it the right way, A. And B, they have now opened Pandora's box. If they disagree with management from now on, they will have the opportunity to do this.
Well, that my brain is a management brain. That's where I choke because when I used to watch Chuck Todd interview on Meet the Press with people he disagreed with, I never really thought of him as a journalist. I thought he was a Democrat arguing with a Republican. I never.
I agree with that. I think that's absolutely. I felt that he replaced, what was the guy's name?
Tim Russert.
No. Tim Russert died, and then David
Gregory.
Yes, replaced him.
Who was horrible.
Yes, and we were thrilled that Chuck Todd got in, and Chuck Todd did exactly what Keith is suggesting, is that he basically played the role of somebody who was balanced. And in fact wasn't. He was playing the role for a very, I'm just telling you what I didn't say that. I said I didn't like it.
Yeah, and so to me, when Chuck Todd did this, it was actually a continuation of his previous self. To me, it wasn't a new Chuck Todd. It was, he's still playing the role of the Democrat in the room. And actually what MSNBC needs is some Republicans in the room, because I can't watch it.
Well, MSNBC, every one of those anchors,
an election denier.
Yeah, and MSNBC's, brain trust, with the exception of Rachel Maddow. I mean, Nicole Wallace was the head of publicity or whatever the
George Bush.
She was the communications director for the George W. And let's not forget Michael Steele, who is now an anchor on MSNBC, was the head of the RNC.
No, there's lots of ex-Republicans who are now critics, but current Republicans, even election deniers, that's not like saying you're a heathen when you're in a room of Christians. It's okay to be an election denier if that's what you are.
No,
make American pray
not
again.
Okay. Not okay to be.
No, it is. Why is it not okay? I mean, there's so many people that have that point of view.
Well, let me put it this way: it's not okay.
And by the way, that's why there is a Fox News. That's why there is a Fox News. And why is there a Fox News? Because the fairness doctrine was killed.
Well, you're never gonna persuade the undecided if you don't beat in argument the other side. And the other side are election deniers.
No, they're not all election.
The ones in the driving seat are. The ones in the driving seat are election deniers.
Maybe 30%, and 30% does not win an election.
No, but they now own the GOP.
That's in Russia.
They own the GOP. A good one. They own the GOP. I mean, they're not just a weird friend.
But who are we going to support here, Keith? Are we going to support?
No, it's not supporting them. It's
yes, it is.
It's how to
support the people actually who riot on the Capitol and think
because it's political expression.
It's about how to.
Okay.
It's about how to defeat them.
It's not about how to defeat them. That's if you're going to suggest that something that I find egregious and other people find egregious, and there are also people on your side, is okay. That has nothing to do with how to defeat them or not. It's just, you have your opinion, you stand with it.
We have to be able to talk together.
Honestly, I think. Sorry, I'll put myself on mute because my gardener's here.
There is a fundamental flaw in this discussion, and the flaw is the assumption that everybody is working from the same set of facts. That's how you have a democracy. If you have a group that isn't working from the same set of facts, then you have no way to communicate.
You mean like alternate facts?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. So what about that is a flaw of this discussion? I agree with you.
We are assuming, we are making the tacit assumption that the Rona Daniels Romney, or whatever her name is, came to the party ready to work from the set of facts that everybody else at MSNBC and everybody else, going back to my
I didn't
earlier
think
statement that reality has a liberal bias, that everybody else was working from. If it's 2024 and you're still denying the election results, if you're saying the election was stolen, if you're saying all kinds of hooey in the political sphere, then you really can't be part of the conversation. It's the
You know,
same
I
problem we have
don't-
with
agree with you,
Vladimir
but
Putin.
I don't think that this conversation that we're having is suffering from any illusions about the credibility of people who deny the reality of elections
Yeah.
and democracy.
I'm hearing it from Keith.
Well,
So, well, you know what? I gotta
you
say,
can say and think whatever you
You're not really actually hearing that from me. What you're hearing from me is, I strongly believe that there are a very large number of Americans who believe the election was not fair. I don't agree with them. I think they're deluded. They're not criminals for thinking that, and they're going to vote for Trump. And
Good.
that's just a fact.
Okay.
So if you put that point of view outside the room, okay, then it's hermetically sealed and won't change.
Well, what about Bobby Kennedy? He's hermetically sealed outside the room. The guy's a complete wingnut.
I want to.
There's a lot of them.
I want to throw another thing into the conversation. There is no way that any manager at NBC sat down with Rona and told her what they wanted her to say. There's also probably no way that she said, guys, this is what I'm going to say when I go on your air. What happened was, Steve pointed out, CAA made the deal for somebody that they wanted. They already knew what her position was because her position is clear as ice. It is absolutely specific. Everyone knows what she has to say. So she was hired with their eyes wide open. That's the first big mistake.
Yeah. And I mean, it's still baffling that they actually made that mistake.
And I'm going to go back to what I said in the very beginning. It all starts at the very top when it comes to the news division. And I know, and I hate to say this publicly, but I'm going to. I don't see Cesar Conde as the most powerful journalist in the box, A. B, he is very much trying to become the chairman of NBC Universal, which is not a news job. It is not a news job. And let me tell you, the guys above Caesar, the people who run Comcast, are not happy with what happened.
Sounds a little bit like a plot to the Jennifer Aniston show. What was it, Morning Show?
The Morning Show. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny that you say that. That thought crossed my mind when all of this was going down. This goes to Keith's point about if you're talking about the management, you're actually not talking about the management of NBC. You're talking about the management of Comcast. They're the ones that have the strings to pull.
Yeah.
So one thing that I got out of this, or that I feel has happened, and I'm kind of hopeful about it, is that the journalists got a little bit of well, they got some balls, and now I think that they're feeling more powerful, as they should. I mean, they are the press is a powerful institution, but it seems lately it's been well, we've complained about it a lot here, right?
Look at the third story in my newsletter
what a
today.
powerful thing that they did. And again, Keith, they could have hired another Republican with extremely conservative values, but not an election denier. So
Well, I mean, that's their, it's their prerogative.
Liz Cheney.
It's up to
I-
them. It's up to them. I mean, they've got a lot of anti-Republican Republicans. I agree with what Frank said earlier, a lot. And they're clever by that. I like listening to them. Joe Scarborough is one of them. He's a conservative Republican.
yes,
Uh,
I enjoy
um,
him.
and so they
Middle
do
of the road Republican,
Yeah.
actually, not a conservative.
he
Well,
calls him
these
well,
days.
He
Yeah,
he
self-
was in
conservative,
Congress.
but, you
He
know.
was in Congress, so
he considers
qualifies
it,
as being conservative on the spectrum, but in terms of his actual beliefs, he's moved steadily toward the left over
Yeah.
the last 20 years.
Or at least the center.
no, I agree with that. But when he describes himself, he uses that word conservative. I agree. There's a broader way about that. So they do that. They do have all those people, and so my point isn't really anything other than around this woman, and they should never have hired her. I agree with that. But once they had, that was it. It was off to the races. I do think that the talent response was symptomatic of the fact that they think of themselves as Democrats first and journalists second.
Nah, I don't buy that. Sorry.
No.
I think that they think of themselves as, reality believers.
No, they think of themselves as caretakers of the news brand at NBC. That's what they think of themselves as. And there's nothing wrong with that because somebody
I
has to
agree.
think that way.
There's nothing
And-
wrong with that, but we've all agreed in the past. I don't know if you have agreed actually. We've discussed in the past that MSNBC's big problem, which I think makes it unwatchable, is that it's too partisan. It's like a party political broadcast.
You mean it's like the other side of Fox?
It's the other side of Fox, and I hate Fox as well.
Yeah. Well,
and so I can't listen. I can listen to Fox more because I disagree with it. What I really hate is only listening to things I agree with.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And,
well, wait a minute. Isn't that a form of disagreement?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the many of the things that you're saying, Keith, I agree with, but what I do not agree with is the notion that somehow we have to move to a mythical center in order to appeal to the center that's going to change the results of the election. I don't think that's true. I think that as long as that continues to be, it's going to depress turnout on the left, and it's going to make Trump the next president. So
I kind of agree with that. I would,
okay, so I don't think that's going to happen. In large part, I think because Chuck Todd woke up and discovered some testicles under the covers.
under the
He
cover.
was an Easter present. He thought they were eggs.
Even if they were to hire somebody like Liz Cheney, the story would not change. It wouldn't change because Liz Cheney would come on and be the Republican who was playing the role of the anti-Republican. But it's not the anti-Republican, it's the anti-Trump.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of issues that nobody even thought of, like, for example, aid to Ukraine or aid to Gaza, that Rona could have, made some contribution to, but she wasn't even allowed to. She wasn't even thought of in that capacity. If you think about it, the more I listen to this, the more I realize that this was an unforced error by the management of NBC or CNBC or whatever you want to call it. The strategy should have been to put a red shirt on her for, say, 6 months and let her work behind the scenes and see what she could contribute.
Yeah, but you couldn't do that because of the competition and the agents involved. You couldn't do that. That should have been what happened, Dennis. 100%. And would have been what happened if there hadn't been any competition, or if she had been, in her heart of hearts, really wanted to be a part of the NBC family. She didn't want to just be a part of the NBC family. She was letting her agents determine which one would give her the most money and the best deal.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
Only
I think
$300,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money to me.
Yeah, no, I think that she wants
she has a responsibility also to know what's the best fit for her and where she should land and where she's going to be comfortable and where the public is going to be comfortable for her. And I think you're right, Frank. She went for the dollars.
Or,
But
or
that must,
yeah,
that must be
Steve,
true. That
Steve,
must be
even-
true. I
even
agree
if
with
it wasn't
that.
a lot of dollars, Steve, it might have been the biggest amount of dollars in that pot.
Yeah.
I think. I will also say that the amount of dollars in that pot from when I worked in that business to now has really shrunk. It is not the same by millions of dollars when you talk about the anchors, millions of dollars. The amount of money, for example, that Matt Lauer made versus the amount of money that the lead anchor of the Today Show, Hoda Kotb, makes today is probably 20 or $30 million less.
Yeah,
Wow.
but you know,
And she's a woman.
but the Matt Lauer was basically head of entertainment programming as well as news for NBC.
No, for the Today Show, not for NBC. Absolutely not.
I'm not talking about the specific divisions. I'm just saying that what he was getting paid for was, where in the world is Matt Lauer, as much as he was being paid for any of his functions on that show. He mixed entertainment with news.
Yeah, but let's not forget, you go back to Dave Garroway, he had a monkey. I mean, it's
So did Reagan. It's called Bonzo, I think.
yeah, but I mean, they had a monkey on the Today Show as a cast member.
Well, I would like to just wrap this segment by saying what I hope happens is that that NBC continues to make the corporate decision not to fire Chuck Todd or any of the MSNBC.
that's not going to happen. You're going to see one or two of the leaders gone.
Okay.
That's a lot.
Well, I think that's a lot. Is it going to be Rachel Maddow? No way.
No,
No, he doesn't mean.
Okay. Is it going to be?
He doesn't
Oh,
mean
you're talking about
he
the
means
suits.
Yes.
Executives.
Yes, they're
Yeah.
the ones they're going to have to fall on their swords. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see which one of the three. I think it's three. I think Rashida, who is the president of NBC News, I think she's pretty smart. And she's the one that sort of stayed in the background on this. But the stories are out there that she did in the end acquiesce to the desires of the chairman of the company on his decision to bring in Rona. So I just don't know.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that the blood is going to be let at the executive level.
Yeah,
However,
not the talent.
What I'm talking about is a different decision that they've made, which is, corporately, NBC didn't fire Chuck Todd.
Yes, that's right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take a look. Take a look at
it's too early. It's too early to tell because
No, I don't think so.
I can tell you as an executive, you don't always pull the trigger in the heat of the fire. If you are a survivor and you want to stay in control, you time things in the right way.
I
So-
don't think that they're gonna
Comcast
fire-
management
they
will
would
not
have to
let him-
hire a whole bunch of other people who did the exact same thing.
Yeah,
Listen,
I think
hold-
you'll
let
be.
me- let me say
I
something.
think you'll be shocked what executives can do
No.
when they decide it's the right decision.
Let me say something because I was an executive there. And I'm telling you now, this close to the election, with those important members of that team in the news team, those people are not going to get fired. If they're going to get fired, it's going to be after the election.
That's
and
what
it's
I
gonna
was
be-
just saying.
but
I was
it's
saying
not that it is-
you pick your time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen though. They're not
Keith's
gone.
right. Keith is right. I think.
I don't think that Keith is right. I don't think they're going to get fired before the election, and I don't think they're going to be fired after the election, whichever way that the election goes. If if Trump wins, there's small change in the changes that are going to happen in this country.
By the way, also there is no.
Steve,
not gonna-
I wasn't suggesting they will get fired. I was more having this discussion. What would a rational set of executives do
Right, right.
There's
That's the
lots of
strategy.
evidence. There is
But-
a lot of evidence that we don't have a rational set of executives.
Keith,
So they're not going to do what
At
I
any
just.
of these networks.
let me say something else. Because this is obviously near and dear to my heart. They don't have a powerful enough bench to be able to backfill those people. If they had like a second tier Chuck Todd or a second tier Rachel Maddow, that may be one thing, but they
Chuck
don't.
Todd is the second tier Chuck
Well,
Todd.
yes, you're right. You're 100% right, which means they don't have a third tier. The point is they don't have a bench made up of really great journalists to be able to slide up into those spots. Maybe they have the journalists, but they don't have the talent. And there's a difference between being a journalist and a journalistic talent. Those are two different jobs.
So what I'm saying is, I'm asking the question, and obviously, since it's one of these poll type questions, nobody's going to give me a straight answer.
I will.
Well, let me ask it. Is this going to change the outcome of the election?
No.
In other words, Biden's going to win anyway?
I
Blue
think so.
tsunami.
I think so.
I think it isn't going to change the outcome because the largest number of people don't really care, or are even very aware of it. So the election is going to be decided on much bigger issues.
Yeah.
We hope.
I think the election will be decided on emotional issues, and I think this is at the heart of how people are feeling trapped in this cycle of grievance and anger.
Well, I for one,
Yeah.
am proud of the way the journalists on MSNBC handled this, and I think they stuck their necks out as much as sticking their necks out is possible. Maybe there's nothing that would get them fired. I don't know, but it felt a little dangerous to me, and you could see that this was something that they really, really believed in, and it made me feel better about them. Do I think MSNBC is tilted to one side? Of course I do. But standing up for not hiring an election denier, I think it was worth it.
Yeah.
I really do. And I'm glad, I'm surprised that they did it. I'm surprised that there was cohesion. It seemed like an orchestrated event between probably about, I think I counted at least 6 or 7 journalists who had their own thing to say about this at the end or beginning of their shows. And it was shocking to me. And
It was coordinated. It was coordinated, and it's funny because we're mirror opposites. I fully would expect they would do this. It would be symptomatic to me of their narrow, non-journalist democratic mindset. And I'm totally not surprised that the management caved. I'm totally surprised the management hired this woman in the first place, given all of this. To me, MSNBC now becomes more of a caricature of a news channel than it was before.
These people are mad as hell, and they aren't going to take it anymore. I had to say that. But the other thing I'm gonna throw out a shameless plug. Read the 3rd story in my today's newsletter, and the headline is TV talkers from Rachel Maddow to Pat McAfee gain new license to blast bosses on the air.
Yep.
okay.
That's about right.
But you know what? There was something that you said earlier, I think it was you, Frank, that made me shiver, which is that perhaps the network was sort of gearing up for a possible Trump win, and then they would have the Trump person already seated in their network, and somehow they could sort of, move the tables a little bit towar's that.
Well, I don't know why you were shocked. You saw Chuck Todd opened his comments by saying basically that the only reason for this, he said 3 reasons, but the first reason was access. What does access mean? It means we want to buy in case Trump wins.
My point
That's
is
what this
that
is about.
the thing that gave me shivers is that what are we then doing? Are we creating a press that is endorsing denying elections and lying and ignoring a reality?
Good question.
Is that what and
No,
if
no,
so,
no.
are we then going to have a press that is just as fascist or whatever as the
No, but Tina,
apartheid?
when you say a press that's ignoring reality, part of reality is all these people who are election deniers. So I would say we already have a press that's ignoring reality. It's ignoring those people.
Well, it reports about them. It reports about elections.
Well, by
It
making
doesn't
fun of
support
it, makes
them.
fun of them and joke. It doesn't seriously engage the Trump. I mean, Trump is popular, right? It's real.
It's real for 30%.
So are
By,
cults.
But
by the
that's a lot of
way,
people. That's a lot of
yeah,
people.
but I want to
So-
add, I'm going to add something else to this, and that is that it is pretty clear that they were misguided if that's what they were thinking. I'm saying this after the fact. She was let go from the RNC because she did not
Toe the line.
She did not toe the line. Part of
Yeah,
toeing the
it's
line
about money. It was about
Yes.
money. Trump wanted the money to go to him, and
so that
she
he could
was,
pay his legal bills, and she wouldn't do it.
she wouldn't do
Yeah,
it.
I don't think that's
So-
quite right.
Well,
I don't think
except
that's
I
right.
don't think even if that's not quite right, Dennis, I don't think she has the access that NBC thought it was buying.
But look, if you
Yes.
look
Yes,
at
that's
Fox,
true.
if you look at Fox during Biden, I think they've become more irrelevant. I don't know their view numbers, but I'd be shocked if they haven't gone down. So it is the case that if you decide to be this partisan like Fox does, and you lose, you do become sidelined. So it's not irrational from an executive point of view to ask the question, how do we not be sidelined if Trump wins? That's okay.
Well, I mean, but this has been going on in every campaign since the major networks gained enough leverage to be part of the equation. This is not a new thing. You know, I mean, Reagan, come on, there was a wholesale shift
Well,
to covering the logic of the we're going to win through power by spending the Soviet Union into the ground. That was a big shift in terms of so-called middle of the country consensus.
And
the
anti-trade union side of Reagan sticks in my mind. Remember that pilot strike?
oh my God, no, the air traffic controllers.
The air traffic controllers. I mean, Thatcher did the
His
same.
previous job responsibility, other than governor of California, was the head of the Screen Actors Guild.
Big job.
But he was a zealot for his point of view. I mean, Thatcher completely rewrote the narrative of the UK at the same time, to the point now where unions are a sideshow. They used to be mainstream. They're now a sideshow. And that was a culture war, if you will, fought by foreign wars, which America has also done, the rise of nationalism, and the rise of the individual American versus the group. So you get to this place where it's me, 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 same in the UK. Not the same, by the way, in Spain or Portugal or France. They never went through that transition. And so we're in this individualistic society of individuals where the presidential election is kind of a popularity contest based on self-serving what's good for me. And the polis, the demos, or whatever you want to call it, is poisoned. It's poisoned. This whole thing is poisoned. And MSNBC and Fox are two representations of poison to me.
Well, I see what CNN is going through as being far more poisonous than either Fox or MSNBC.
There's a lot to what you
It's
say.
a different, you're right, but it's
I
a
think-
different kind of poison. It's an irrelevance.
I don't think so. I think that it's the kind of middle of the road strategy, and I think they're going to get nothing from both sides. So I think from a practical perspective, it's going to be a problem for them. I mean, it's get YouTube TV and just turn the sound off and just watch it for a couple of days, and you'll see exactly what's going on.
You know, the best narratives to me are Jon Stewart in his comeback has been great. I like Bill Maher. I think he addresses real issues. You might not agree with his points of view, but he kind of fesses up to what's going on and talks about it. I think he's good. I think all of the news channels have stopped being relevant because they're too scripted to an agenda.
Well, I think they have problems with
Well,
the format of
Jon Stewart and so aren't script, or Bill Maher aren't scripted to an agenda. Of course they are.
Well, yeah, but they have
And they're
like Bill Maher has the other side sitting in the chair every week, and they're good. He picks clever people who are good at arguing, and
but
he argues back
that's
against
part
them.
of his brand. His part of his brand, which I find less. I'm less sympathetic to Maher's humor, as he's made this more of an iconoclastic. I'm obviously a liberal, but on the other hand, if you don't watch out, then these other guys are going to win. And I think it's an effective political perspective, but it's not funny in the way that Jon Stewart is. Jon Stewart is just plain funny.
He's very funny, yeah, and he's been at his best. I mean, he was so bad on the Apple TV show he did compared to what he's doing now on the Daily Show. It's fantastic.
I gotta
Yeah.
say, I miss Belzer now, maybe more than ever, because he would have looked at the world through the Belzer eyes, and it would have been hilariously funny and poignant.
Yeah, and I thank you for your Belzer imitation, which I noticed a little bit earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was Belzer doing Reagan. Thank you.
Well,
Nancy.
All right. Well, unfortunately, and I say that sarcastically, we don't have time for the Apple story.
No, we stuck on this like hard.
But
yeah, we didn't get any comments. I didn't see any anyway, which is
nobody's watching.
Well, I think we didn't quite promote either the live that all that well. So I know.
Plus, we never do the show at this time, so no one would expect to see
It'll
it.
be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine because we've still got a 3-week-old show to release on Substack.
And by the way, I'm going to be out of town
no.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in New York, doing an interview. I can't tell you about why or what with CNN.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, for a documentary. So I'll tell you about it
But
when
you
I
can't
can.
tell us why.
Why?
You just told us why.
I didn't. I did not tell you why. Did not happen.
I think we should do the formal close and then we can find out.
No, I can't do it.
Can't tell us.
Can't happen.
Wouldn't be prudent.
Not gonna do it.
Wouldn't be prudent.
All right. Well,
my NDA would just like, that's it.
okay. Last thoughts and make them short. Starting with Tina.
Tina, last thoughts. Happy Easter. I again just I was impressed with the solidarity that I saw at MSNBC, and it gave me a little kick, a positive one, and
We get a kick out of you too.
yep.
I get no kick from champagne.
Okay, Frank.
I actually have only one thing to say. Make America pray again.
Oh God. Yeah.
I wonder.
Oh, them golden slippers. Oh, them golden slippers.
There you go. That too. It's too bad we didn't have time to talk about that. We would have gone down a great rabbit hole with those two stories.
Wow.
Yeah, but luckily there's not enough time these days to go after Trump because everything is going after Trump.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. The
It
more you
makes
go
it-
after, it makes it helps him every single time.
I don't buy that.
I don't
It
buy it
helps
either.
him
No, I
with the
feel
same
I feel him
30%.
weakening.
It does not help him
I feel him weakening
overall.
again.
You know, I think people are starting to come to the understanding that they're going to actually have to get out and vote.
Yeah, I think people are tired of his shtick.
But the rest of it, how the court system is going to deal with this, it's going to be slightly favoring Trump all the way through the Supreme Court. That ain't going to cut it.
Are those your last thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Dennis.
Mine. Oh,
Den-
yeah.
Perhaps something for another time. As I keep reading and studying, it occurs that the rules of warfare are being significantly rewritten in Ukraine. One of the more obvious points that I see is that the attack helicopter and the very dangerous, risky job of flying one is being replaced by the drone, which will have all kinds of downstream effects.
Great, absolutely. That'd be a great conversation to have. By the
Keith.
way, we did get 2 comments, both of them very positive about today's show from journalists.
Okay, so we can hear about
Wow,
that
thank you.
after we go off the stream. Keith, last thoughts.
My favorite story of the week is a bad one. It's James Carville telling the story. He was interviewed, I think, in the New York Times, and he told the story of
Maureen Dowd.
of him resigning from the university professorship or whatever it was in Carolina, I think, one of the Carolinas. And some student had, I don't know, there was some reason to celebrate. He bought a bottle of champagne and he said, "Let me show you how to open the champagne." And he did a reverse twist on the cork, kept it in his hand, and it made this sound. And he said, "That's the sound of a woman pleasured." And he got into total shit. Like, all the students complained about him using that expression, and he resigned. And this interview was a long discussion about his feelings about that, where you realized he's totally dispassionate, aggressive, doesn't give a shit kind of a guy. And I loved reading it. I thought it was fantastic.
I did too. It's good.
Okay. That's it. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. And we want more of Brent, even if it's just silent. Thanks
Maybe to
again.
pay him more.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.